Do you think that dancing activates your feminine energy? Whenever I do Kinergy, it's like, oh, I feel so much softer, less rigid, connected with myself. I don't feel that after Soul Cycle.
I believe that, the feminine energy, there is no hierarchy. They coexist. And unfortunately, it has been much more suppressed.
Dance has been the biggest therapy. I basically blast music and dance, and I get as weird and as awkward as possible. I move that energy, and dance has become my greatest therapist, my best friend through all of that grief. And so that's why I really want Kinergy to take over the world.
Dance and ping pong.
I want to talk to you about business and money, because you have built multiple very successful businesses.
Let me use my CEO brain to hire and delegate to the right people, and let me be the artist and the innovator, because that's my superpower. Just because I can doesn't mean I should. When people are like, oh my gosh, she's such a selfless woman, I'm like, that's the worst compliment you could ever say to me. I'm a selfless woman? Like, that means I don't care about myself. Like, I don't want to be a selfless woman. No. You're building a new connector, a new neural pathway of that experience as you're releasing trauma.
If you're living from the place of your past self, you're going to continue having the same life. If you want to step into your higher self, it's time to break the habit of being yourself and build a new brain connection. Hi, my name is Aggie, and this is Biohacking Bestie. The one-stop shop for a modern queen, where you can find biohacking courses, self-growth courses, and where you can find the most incredible community of women, so you can hit all of your biohacking goals and beyond. So which one of the practices was the most helpful?
I'm comfortable sharing everything. Yeah. I mean, I'm similar to you in the sense that, like, I am a curious human being, and I want to try everything and see what works for me. But I also have a lot of trust, and I have a very good radar of, like, who I feel is sketchy and what resonates. So I've tried a lot of things. Yeah.
Because for me personally, I grew up in Poland, which is heavily Catholic, and so it was this big idea that you're a drug addict if you touch any drugs. And so for me, it was like a big thing when I got into spiritual journey, wanted to try, for example, ayahuasca, and it was like I'm so torn, because from one hand, after I did, I was like, this has been the most healing experience, because I was able to see the dynamic of my childhood I never saw. And it brought me down on my knees so much, but also helped me heal a lot of these ideas of what I've been told growing up is good or bad. Because if you do it through the lens of who you are, there is no such thing as good and bad. There is only just, perception of what it means to you, right? Like, so
yeah. Well, I did not have a good experience with ayahuasca, but I have done it, and but mine was because I wasn't prepared of, like, what am I doing? It was very, very early on, and it was before I even was that curious about my spiritual journey. So I didn't have the best experience, but I have had similar experiences of what can happen through ayahuasca in different ways. And I've had so many friends who have had such an incredible, self-awareness, but also healing moment. And that's, like, been a catalyst of change and to shift. So I just personally didn't have a good experience.
No, and I think it's important to say that it's actually cannot be a great experience.
Well, it's about safety. And like, honestly, the person that created the environment for us was also didn't have a relationship with the shaman, and the shaman had come in after like a 4-day bender himself, and then like it got all very weird. And the minute we were able to like have a little bit of like what's happening, I was like, everybody get the fuck out of my house. I was like, leave now. But so, excuse my language. No. Because again, it was like, I didn't feel safe or trust the people that were facilitating. And that's the biggest part, you know? And so, and it was no bueno for me. But I have, like I said, had other experiences that have been as powerful as what that can offer. So,
for me personally, just connecting with my 5-year-old I call her Agnieszka because, I grew up in Poland. So that's my real like full name.
Yeah.
And so like trying to make her proud, remembering who she wanted to be, what she cared about. And I think that's what, was my first experiences with plant medicine, was just remembering that. And I don't need to do it all the time to remember,
Of course,
to have a photo
yeah.
of her and just be like, I'm just making you proud. And,
Yeah.
the Aggie's like so intimidated to have you sit in my home. But there's the little Agnieszka. I'm like, but you guys should just play. She's
Yeah,
just a human. So if we were
totally.
5 years old, like,
Yeah.
I would just see, Jules in you. Or
Yeah.
what did your parents call you when you were little?
I mean, they would call me Julianne. My brother called me Jules. My nieces and nephews today, they call me Aunt Juju. So there's
Juju.
that.
Oh, that's so
I also
cute.
have like Juicy Ann. When Juicy Ann comes out to play, she's
Juicy
the like
Ann, I love
she's
that.
the sensual like woman that's kind of like in her own zone, having a dance party by herself. Like that's Juicy Ann. I have Jaybird. I have there's a
Amazing.
lot of different nicknames for me.
Yeah,
For
and
sure.
and so going back to Kinergy actually, because that importance of play, and so
Yes.
first of all, epic name. Can you talk about how you created the name, because it's amazing?
Yeah. So Kinergy is, a representation of kin, which is kinship, your tribe, your community, kinesthetic energy, obviously, because of the energetic health that we promote within the modality, and kinesthetic, obviously, just with our body and movement and energy. So, putting that all together, it's the state that we all end up getting to, which is a state of Kinergy. And that's how the name came about. It was interesting because this whole method came to me while I was going through like a very big spiritual expansion. And, I feel fully like it was channeled. It was, it came through me. I was at my whiteboard and like just writing things down. I don't know where they came from, and never,
Wow.
really heard or seen or read anything about it. But then like a month later, like it comes into my orbit, and it's like this ancient like practice that's, been happening in the East for years, and so it's like, I truly believe that we all have this information that can come through us, and it is just going to be expressed in my own unique way or
Yeah.
your own unique way. And that's what Kinergy is. It's all the years of my dance experience and expertise, and the experience of teaching, celebrities on the show, not just the physical dance moves, but really being there for them. And it's an emotional journey, and you think that they're just going to learn how to dance, but they connect to themselves in a whole new way. I was like, how do I bring that experience
Of
to
Dancing
the
with the Stars
masses?
to-
to the
no-
people that like watch, and they're like, man, I wish I was a celebrity so I could be on this show.
I mean, that was me. And then Kinergy, it's so true, because I think, first of all, like going through Dancing with the Stars, I feel like everyone should go through that whole experience, because it's really cathartic in a way. Second, for most people that aren't dancers, we aren't so connected to our bodies. So when you spend, a week or 2 or 3 or 5, whatever, just connecting with your body and your emotions, a lot of things come up.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And
Oh,
you
yeah.
probably were like the therapist for all of the celebrities. You're like, okay, well, we were just practicing cha-cha, okay? I don't need to hear about your divorce right now.
But that's true though,
Yeah.
and again, the body holds all the information. So the minute it starts flowing and starts moving, all these suppressed things and emotions, stories, all those qualities of us that we're not allowing to be free start coming through. And it's like, well, now what do I do with that? And so that's what was coming through me as Kinergy came to me. And I was like, wow, this is really how we can offer this to more people than just, the celebrities on Dancing with the Stars. And once it started happening, I realized, I was like, oh my gosh, these movements, this breath work, this visualization is all coming through in more of like a shaman way, which is
It
like,
really is.
it's all based in the earth elements, earth, fire, water, air, and ether. I'm getting to my point. So Kinergy was actually supposed to be called ether, because it's the combination of all the elements, and it's that ether state. But I decided not to do that and went in with Kinergy. But total side note, have you seen Frozen 2?
No, but I heard you talk about it.
I was blown away because that's what I mean by like ancient teachings, and like it comes through you because Kinergy was created. We went on tour. We launched it, and then Frozen 2 came out.
Oh,
and
so you guys were first.
Yes.
Oh, no way.
And Frozen 2 came out, and it was like all the elements. And, you know, obviously the missing one is Ether, and it's her, you know, and it's like, this is literally Kinergy.
You're like, I'm going to sue Disney right now. Or
And so it was just amazing. And again, it wasn't like, oh, dang. It was like confirmation that this is like wisdom, and it's coming
Yes.
through in different mediums, through a Disney movie or through, you know, a modality that like people can do themselves. And so
it.
yeah, it's pretty
It's funny
cool.
because like during my ayahuasca ceremonies, she said, "Oh, you're so cute. You think you're biohacking. It's, you know, it's an ancient wisdom of what really biohacking is. It's like, how do we get rid of managing disease and kind of focus on maintaining health?" And she's like, you know, ayahuasca, when I say she, you know, like check out like traditional Chinese medicine. And, you know, there's like, as I started exploring, I'm like, wow, there's so many commonalities. And we come now with like, whoa, it's biohacking and science. But in fact, it's like you said, it's an ancient wisdom that we just probably have just fancier tools and, you know, wearables and whatnot. But at the end of the day, the principle is really like manage your sleep better. It's really important. Have a downshifting practice, whatever that means. Move your body. I mean, everything that, you know, the new age biohacking promotes is not that different.
It's basically just going back to the roots.
We just call it like
when we didn't have technology. But, you know, again, with anything, technology is amazing if you are using it and it's not using you. And, you know, if you can figure out a way to do both, great.
There's a big reason why I keep asking about Kinergy, because we might be cooking something together.
Yeah.
Surprise, surprise. So we won't mention it yet, but maybe something together with Kinergy, which would be amazing.
Well, I'm just like, again, honored. Like, I feel like Kinergy is a very niche thing right now. It's not this like, it's not Peloton, you know what I mean? So it's like, it's a very specific, you know, modality for people who want to go internal and like have self-discovery and expression and take a bit of a chance on themselves and risk, you know, like feeling a little uncomfortable, but in a safe, playful, curious way that, you know, as we market it on the outside, it's dance, it's play. You're going to come and have fun with us. And while that's happening, you're going through a big transformation that you don't even really have to think about doing, because we've designed the modality to be able to take you through that journey and have that container so that when you're done, you feel expanded, but you also feel grounded, and that it's like closed off. So you're not going to be like expanded and leave and be like, what just happened?
Amazing.
You know, so it's definitely a very exciting, I think, modality that people can really go inward and find themselves in a new way. And
It's beautiful. And it's, for me, it's so much more powerful than, you know, they're riding a bike, because it's that forward movement. Yes, it's great, but I always kind of feel like it's very masculine and sort of machine. And so letting yourself, and it's actually one of the questions, because I asked my followers to ask you a question, so maybe I'll ask it right now. Do you think that dancing activates your feminine energy, from Shana Molina? And I would say, I don't want to answer for you. I would say like Kinergy, whenever I do Kinergy, it's like, oh, I feel so much softer, less rigid, connected with myself. And I don't feel that after Soul Cycle. After Soul Cycle, I'm like, yeah,
jacked. And by the way, there's room for that, you know? And like, we are, a great, beautiful combination of both energies. I think that where we are in the world today,
in a very masculine, patriarchal world,
yes,
it's
absolutely,
much easier to tap into this.
And I believe that, you know, the feminine energy, there is no hierarchy. They coexist. Yeah. And unfortunately, it has been much more suppressed. And so instead of diving into that feminine energy or yin energy. Yin, yang, wait, did I mess that up? I think I might have. But that feminine energy, we have tried to match the masculine. And so we are continuing to suppress it. So diving into it is exactly what Kinergy is. And, I love yoga. I love anything that promotes that, like, motivational, like, forward motion, but yoga specifically is all linear and up and down motions, or forward and back, whereas Kinergy is circular. It's like we use a lot from like here down, and focusing on the womb area. I mean, I could get really geeky and go into
Please
like
do.
certain things.
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
so like
Because this is like, you're like deep biohacking right now with Kinergy, but
yes.
just like,
Well, what I love, like, I believe this is kind of how I feel like it came through me. And again, there's multiple ways we can see things, but where in the body I believe like our ego is right here underneath our heart, which is like our willpower, kind of in that area of the solar plexus. And so I think we have, as a society and generation, been living from like here up, which is beautiful. It's high vibration. It is like bright. It's like sun energy. It's spirit energy. It's like, right? But I think in order for us to get down into this feminine nature, that's darker energy. It's where our wound is. It's where the wisdom is. But you
Root
have to
chakra.
go through your ego to get to the wound, to get to the wisdom. And most
being
of the
grounded
time,
and being, rooted in your trauma, right? And like also the feeling of safety is
yes,
all there.
Well, and by the way, here, like most feminine energy people are so afraid to be in the wound because they're afraid they're going to be stuck there. And so they pop in and out of like wound to ego, wound to ego. Most masculine energy beings won't even go through the ego. They can't get through there to get to the wound. So that one's very challenging. So with the movement, it allows to surrender the mind, the ego, to the body, to the wound, but you don't have to stay there. You actually go through the wound to get to the wisdom, which is even deeper. And once you get into the wisdom, then you bring all that energy back up through the body. And then it's like the ultimate lovers. Like you get both energies to come through to meet in your heart. And then all of a sudden you can like expand that way. So it's not about leaving one out. It's about allowing you to drop deep, 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 come back through, bring in both, and expand. Whereas most of the time we're cutting ourselves off from here down.
You sound like my spiritual teacher, actually. She says the same thing, that it's like, you need to go. She's like, you don't want to be that woo-woo person that walks around. It's like, everything's great and not connected to her trauma. She's like, your true power is in your womb as a woman. If you want to get into the next level of Aggie, that's like, isn't like this and kind of like obsessed with what people think, but really knows her worth. It's going to be here, but it's going to be like moving that trauma and everything that I'm in my shadow, right?
And I always say it, the minute I'm trying to get away from my wound, I'm already in, like, I'm not connected. So
And
my
it owns
go-to,
you, right? Because the moment you start trying to run away from something, it starts owning you instead of just being like.
Well, my trick, my go-to is like literally stopping, like holding my belly and being like, I own and accept my wound. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, I've acknowledged it. And now it doesn't have the power, you know? And so I own and accept my wound. I own and accept my wound. Like I will constantly say that over and over again when I'm feeling like an audition or I have a meeting and I'm like, this part of me that doesn't feel like I belong, which is a very big wound of mine. I will be like, okay, belonging, that's my wound right now. I own and accept my wound. I don't feel like I belong. I will do that, and I'll like totally confront it. And then all the charge goes away.
Even just the fact that you have the courage to share it in a very beautiful way. You don't come from a place of like a victim mindset, like, oh, I don't belong, but kind of like, it's a core one that I have, and you share so many beautiful things so openly. For me, it's like super inspiring, because that's another thing that I wanted to mention, because when I tell women, please be unapologetic, they have this image of like a really aggressive, almost vulgar woman that is just like, unapologetic, fuck everybody. I'm like, no, but unapologetic can be graceful and soft and feminine. It's just not apologizing for who you are, which is what you do. And I was like, oh, beautiful example of a woman who's unapologetic, but through softness, through vulnerability, through being herself. And it's so beautiful to see, because unapologetic isn't aggressive, or knowing your worth, not wanting to be not needing a man, wanting a man doesn't need to be aggressive. It can just be soft.
Yeah.
And
But and again, not a but, and a lot of people don't have that example of what that looks like. And so of course we're going to go and we're going to match that other energy, right? And so like, it's beautiful that you're creating a space for people to have an example and a model of that. And hopefully Kinergy is also that for people, because like, I don't know. I've realized that like one of my biggest fears was, when I do all this healing, I'm going to be so boring. because I'm actually like an introvert. I'm an introverted extrovert.
Okay,
so
cool.
I'm not an extrovert. I am quite shy. But when I'm connected, I can share so much, and it's coming from like, my authentic self.
Yeah.
But it's not like what I used to be, which was like, I have all this energy and I'm going to like create this fun environment for people. And now like, I don't know how to do that in the same way as I used to. And so my fear was like, I'm going to be boring. I'm not going to like, people aren't going to like feel comfortable. And like, cause I'm not like making sure everybody's okay. And
I have that fear of being boring too, because I'm very low key. So like sometimes I go to parties, I'm like, oh my God, I'm like the most boring person in the room. I'm just sitting there and just like very quiet.
I'm such an observer now, whereas I had to feel like I was in the conversation, and now I just watch and like, listen, and that was my big fear. I was like, oh no, I'm gonna be so boring now.
You're not boring.
I know I'm not boring.
But it's funny how like
Right?
I can literally, when you said that, I'm like, oh my God, I literally feel the same way. But it's also interesting, because that doesn't mean that when I see other people that aren't very loud, do I think of them as boring?
Never.
So why would I think that about myself, right? So
Little voices.
really, really interesting. I want to talk to you about business and money.
Yes.
Because I have heard you talk about Dolly Parton and her advice to you, which is amazing, because you have built multiple very successful businesses. Did you use Dolly Parton's advice? I mean, you kind of know, right?
I definitely did, and also didn't. Before I got that advice, I was trying to do so many different things. So if all of you have been listening, I'm clearly very airy. I am an artist. I'm all over the place. I will jump from one topic to the next. Like that's my nature. So with business, I kind of did the same thing. It was like, I'm also very, if I have a goal, I will achieve it. I mean, I'm a competitor by nature. So like, give me a task and I will own it. But I realized that like I was doing so much. I was then starting to like be the CEO of my companies and doing all the managing and the operating, and all of my creativity and my innovation was like being like sucked and like drained.
Yeah, and burnout, right?
Yeah, and because I was so focused on the other things, which absolutely needs to have a role in the company, but just maybe not with someone whose nature is totally an artist and like, needs to like see 15 paces in front of me and have somebody else work backwards, and that was the Dolly Parton advice. She looked at me, she's like, Julianne, she's like, I feel like we have a lot in common. We have a lot of similarities. You want to do all these different things. She's like, but just make sure you stay the artist. And she's like, I wanted to create a theme park. Do you think I knew how to do that? No. She's like, but I hired people who did know how to do it. And she's like, in turn, I'm smarter than them because I hired them. Yeah. And so, of course, in her like Dolly Parton beautiful way. And so I was like, oh my gosh, that's so true. Just because I can doesn't mean I should. And
beautiful.
And I'm like, great. I proved it to myself that I can do it. And all the while I like burnt the F out. I was so exhausted. So now it's like, let me use my CEO brain to hire and delegate to the right people, and let me be the artist and the innovator, because that's my superpower.
Yeah, and just focusing, I always say in my team, like, what's your genius? Everyone stays in their genius, and I know that I can do everything. Again, I proved it to myself, but I'm like, I'm just not happy, and I feel like just not fulfilled when I'm doing everything. And so having the wisdom to hire smart people is the smartest thing, like Dolly Parton say. I have another question from my follower, which is PL Corolla. She says, okay, can you talk about your friendship with Nina? Doing business together with your friend, isn't that scary?
You
Where's some
know,
of the business advice?
you know, a lot of people tell you, don't work with your friends, don't
work with your
don't
exes.
work with your family, do your exes or whatever. But I think that if you create like the foundation of what and how you respect each other and create boundaries. I mean, I always used to hate the word boundaries because it was like, but I don't want to like close my heart off. And I'm like, you don't have to close your heart off. You just have to like create like a boundary of respect. And I think that has helped us so much. And by the way, we've had our moments of in and out and, frustrations.
So, let's just talk, because we're talking about a fresh
fine wine. Yes. Yeah. We have our wine company together, and Nina and I are best friends. And when we started working together, it was the most exciting thing because we have very similar creative ambitions. We have similar, ambitions to make a lot of money and then like be generous with it and
also drink wine while we're together. So we might as well make our own.
Exactly. We have done a lot of wine drinking in our friendship.
Are you like, wouldn't it be cheaper just to make our own?
I know. But, as I said before, like, life is about creating memories and moments. And so that's what you do when you have a glass of wine, you're creating a memory. Yeah. So that was huge. I think also just the idea of creating a better for you wine, which I stopped drinking wine at like 28 because it was just making me sick and I couldn't do it. And so the idea that we could kind of
cleaner,
get a cleaner version, less calories, less carbs, like was great. But I will say, like you said before with the triggering thing, like Nina and I trigger the crap out of each other, but it's because we are soulmates. Like we are so meant to be in each other's lives, because the part of me that triggers me is the part that, Nina is very blunt in how she asks for things, and I get like, and it's the thing that I wish I had more of. And so she's such a beautiful example to help me stand up for myself in a new way. And what I do to trigger Nina is something completely different. And it's
what do you do to trigger Nina?
I don't know. I mean, you'll have to ask her, but like, I definitely know that I do. And so, but it's the part of her that exists that she's not allowing to come through. And so, I always say this, like my best friends are the ones that challenge me and help me grow, and they're the ones that I want to go through life with, and those are the ones that I feel the safest with, because we're willing to do it. Whereas when everything's just great all the time, I'm like,
I don't trust you.
I'm like, where's the bottom? And not that I can't have fun, and like you might be my adventure buddy.
I know exactly what you mean. I've had those situations as well where you basically feel like it can't, like, it's just too easy, and not like in a good way, because I think our intuition, like, as a woman, is like, you're not being fully authentic with me, you're just like performing, and I want you to get ugly and annoyed at me, and you have all the right to be annoyed with me, and I want to get annoyed with you, and just like, let's heal together, because it's not about like always smiling, it's about like being each other's mirrors and like helping each other heal.
Totally. And like I have such great friends that have that, and then I also have friends that like, part of me wishes we could get there, but it's probably not going to happen until it's on their journey and their time. So, whatever frequency we're on together, that works for that, you know?
Oh,
And
beautiful.
so it's also about accepting, because I think there was a big time in my life, I think when Kinergy was actually coming through me, and like I was like having all these experiences, I wanted to share everything with everyone, and like I was like so excited, and everybody was just looking at me like,
What are
you
you
have completely lost your mind and you've gotten crazy and you're all woo woo hippity dippity, and we don't know how to relate to you. And I didn't know how to relate to them. And so it felt very isolating. But I realized, I was like, I cannot force them to try to understand me.
Yeah.
I just got to be in this in my own pace, my own time. And if and when that happens for them, like, great, I'll be there. But like, I cannot force anybody to, you know, try to be on this journey with me.
Yeah, and it's one of the hardest lessons for me personally, because you know they say like, if you're ready for a change, are you willing to let go of everything that isn't a full vibrational match to who you are about to become? And so you kind of say, yes, I am, but then when it happens, when you step into the like the higher version of yourself, the higher self, and then you see friendships falling apart, you're like, oh no, but I want to take these people with me. And the universe is like, well, didn't you say you're ready to let go, to make space for the things that you know fully align with what you do?
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, I did say that actually.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's tough because
Oh,
it's like,
yeah.
because I don't know, have you dealt with guilt? Because that's a big one for me. Because I feel like I want people to come with me, and I want to help
course.
everybody. And
Yeah.
when they're not helping themselves, I'm like, can't you just, you know, I'm giving you everything to come with me. And that's also like a rescuer, you know, mode of me
Yeah.
that I have to heal. And like, I can't, I can't save anybody.
No,
you
of
know?
course not. And it's not your responsibility.
Yeah.
It's not mine.
And it's also my ego. I'm like, oh, I
Of
feel like I
course.
can save you. Like,
Of course.
am
And
I?
of
Just
course
like-
it's coming from a place of like love, but it's also like, is that a part that like gives me a sense of control too?
Oh, 100%.
You know? And
like,
like
that's what my coach says. Is
exactly.
like, maybe you stop controlling people for a second and just let them be. And I'm like, oh yeah, that is what love is. Not trying to change them. Okay.
Totally. But but no, I definitely like, if again, I have sworn a few times now here, but like
Oh,
for
please do.
the last 3 years, like I was kind of in the death hole pit of shit, which is like the like what most people call the ashes, you know, phoenix rising from the ashes moment.
I love your version way better.
I was like, nope, death hole pit of shit, like just the worst. And it stemmed from, that's why I was saying like the spiral, because I like went through all this internal transformation and expansion and everything, and I was feeling so aligned. And then now that the internal self had unwound, I still had control. All of a sudden my external world fell apart. And that was, you know, my marriage and my friendships and even business things that like started in one way and then like shifted, because when I implemented all of those friendships and businesses and romantic relationships, I was in a completely different zone, or I was calling it in from a different place of me out of fear or desperation or lack, or maybe actually control, because I needed to create my own community that made me feel safe. And
I mean, and we're brought up, like, I heard you say that about earlier, that, you know, we're brought up to be the nice girls, to like win the love of a Prince Charming. So you got your Prince Charming, and, you know, I don't know how big part of you felt like, you know, I know like from my experience, I get into the relationship and I love bomb the person, and just like, you know, I'm going to be the perfect wifey, and I'm going to make you every single meal and wash everything. And then I get really quickly burnt down, and I realize I'm like, oh, I don't know how to ask for what I need. I mean, now I think I do.
yeah.
I'm learning, but at the beginning, I'm just like, I'm going to project into this fucking performer of like, I'm going to be
Who I want to be for this person.
But I also have to ask what I need, and I didn't know how to. And then I get like, hey, like I feel so underappreciated, and they're like, whoa, where is this coming from?
Totally.
I'm like, well, I just didn't exactly knew what I wanted,
Yeah.
and I was brought up that a woman has to be all of these things and have no needs. So I felt selfish, or again guilty, or whatever, and so yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when people are like, oh my gosh, she's such a selfless woman. I'm like, that's the worst compliment you could ever say to me. I'm a selfless woman. Yeah. Like, that means I don't care about myself.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to be a selfless woman.
I want to full of self.
I want to be a self-interested woman, you know, like take care of myself. The more I have, the more I can give. And the more I give, the more I can have. It's, you know, it's not linear. It's a paradox of like giving and receiving, but I totally get it. And when, you know, I look at like my relationships with those people or my ex-husband, and like, I have nothing but absolute love and adoration for those human beings. And, you know, I even said it recently. I'm like, if I knew what I knew now, I wonder if there would be a different outcome, because there would have been so much more of a navigation that like would have been more guided. Whereas as you're going through that, I went immediately into protective mode and like go back into what I know to survive. And so, you know, like, again, no regret. Like, life is how it's supposed to come and go. But like, it's definitely like, you look at it and you can see it from a distance now, the patterns and the cycles that keep you continuing to do the same thing, just in a different way. And you know, that experience, like I said, death hole, pit of shit, but I'm not grateful for it. But I learned so much during that time. And I'm so grateful for the willingness that I had to change the pattern, because I could have very easily gone into another relationship right away, or gone into
like
the
so
thing.
Much easier, right? To just go back to, you know, another. I'm sure it's easy also when you're a celebrity and you get all that attention that you could be like, oh, cool, from one another, you know, another project or another, you know, show, and
and to have that space where you're sitting in it is so
and
uncomfortable.
sit in your feelings.
Yeah. So I think like it's hard. It was a hard time, and grief and loss, and any kind of change is loss. And so you are going to grieve an old version of yourself. And like, nobody teaches you how to grieve.
Yeah, people are so uncomfortable. If you started crying in front of most people, usually dogs would actually just come and help you.
Yeah.
No, she's not crying
Speaking
yet.
of.
Perfect.
Stretch.
Perfect. All right, some attention. Thanks, Peanut. But I love the perfect tears. Like, but it's funny how we like get so uncomfortable with other people's expressing emotion. So I love my dad to death, and he's amazing, but he is a very angry person, very quick to get angry. And so I get very uncomfortable with anger. On top of that, we judge women for getting angry because it's not sexy, just as we judge men for getting sad and crying. So an angry woman is a fucking psycho. So the moment I get angry and it's healthy for me to get angry, I'm going to judge myself and just not do it. And then all of a sudden, all sits here. And I started getting gut issues. And I went to Dr. D, who basically, he was like, you need to say hi for me. And I'm like, okay, cool. I will mention you. But he does a lot of like some similar work to you, which is like moving energy through the body. And he said, you need an anger extension, and you need to get that anger out of your body, because you're judging yourself for your anger, and you can't, if you can't hold your own anger, you can't hold somebody else's.
Yes. Yeah.
And same with grief. If I can't hold my own grief, I can't hold yours. So if you come to me, it's like, hey, I just had a really tough day, I'll be like, oh, don't cry anymore. Let's distract. Let's do this. Because your grief would make me so uncomfortable.
Totally. Thank you for saying that, because that is a huge lesson that I learned with a lot of my friendships that I had, which was, I've always been the bright, shiny person. And when they saw that I was not okay, they did not know how to handle it. And so I wanted so badly for them to be there for me, but they couldn't, because they didn't know how to be there for themselves, because they've never allowed themselves to go through pain.
They never sat with their own grief, and so they couldn't do that for you, obviously.
Yeah.
And so you can't really blame them for it.
Definitely
but at the same time, all you really want for somebody, and it's actually, I hate to be like mentioning ayahuasca like back and forth,
but
it was so beautiful. I had a really tough journey right after the breakup with Jacob, and I went to sit with Aya, and I was like deep grief because Aya showed me every single time where I chose not to cry because I was like, I'll distract myself, or I have a job, my grandma died, and I was like, oh, I have a job, so I have to go, and I was constantly distracting myself from feeling grief. And during that ceremony, I just saw every single moment of when I was ready to cry and move that grief through, but I chose not to. And that during that night, everything came up, and so I was grieving, crying, and one of the shaman just sat in front of me, and he just sat there and just prayed, and like not trying to send me energy, not trying to fix it. He was just there, and that made me cry even more because I realized like, oh my God, I just realized that just someone's presence without trying to fix it, make it better, just being there and just sit there is the most incredible gift. And so that's when I realized a lot of times we don't know how to sit with someone's grief because we feel like we need to say something smart.
To do something,
And to do something. But at the end of the day, just he's like, hey, I don't know what to say, but let's just be sad together. Because I can see that part of me that also like, needs to come out. But we glorify good vibes, and so when you're not good vibes, all of a sudden you feel like it's actually something that I'm processing through right now because I go through a lot of like shitty times right now, and so I isolate myself because I'm like, oh, I'm not fun to be around, so I don't want to reach out to friends. Versus if I was smarter, I'll be like, hey, I'm not fun to be around, but I kind of want to be around humans because this is when I need you the most.
Of course, but we're again, take it easy on yourself because that's the last thing that we think of, right? To like reach out to someone. So like you or anybody listening right now, like when you're in that like hard place, like of course you're not going to reach out to somebody because that's the last thing. But just know that we all feel that and we all want that. And so like if you have a tiny, tiny little like inkling that you should reach out, just reach out.
But to be fair, the one like dance has been the biggest therapy. I basically blast music and dance, and I get as weird and as awkward as possible. I move that energy, and dance has become my greatest like therapist, my best friend through all of that grief. And so that's why I really want Kinergy to take over the world as much as possible, because I think it's deeper than it might seem at the beginning.
Yes, it is. But it's like we don't want to intimidate anybody.
No, it's just like it's a fun platform, and then you go, we like process all of the like trauma.
Yeah. Well, and by the way, like it's been a work in progress, and maybe that's why it hasn't blown up as we're all hoping it should or want to, because we've had to make sure that everybody feels really safe in it. And so we've worked with neuroscientists, we've worked with trauma therapists to make sure that how when all of this trauma is being unearthed, like it can be contained, so it's not just like you're open and now you're like, what do I do now, and I'm actually going to have a freak out. So there's been a lot of work in the last 2 years of us making sure that we're protecting not just the person taking the class, but the guide who's guiding it, because we're all in the same energetic field at that time. And so the person leading and guiding is also going to have things that come up. And so it's all about like, how do you hold your own stuff and not swim into someone else's, and vice versa, being able to hold it without like, shutting it down, and you're shutting your own self down. So we've worked with, Dr. Frank Anderson, who did a lot of the internal family system
I keep
work.
hearing about it. Like I haven't done it myself, but I keep hearing it's like
wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful. So Dr. Frank Anderson, psychotherapist from Harvard, has helped us with that container. Dr. Wendy Suzuki, neuroscientist, who she talks about the brain and how the hippocampus and building new connectors in the brain, and the two best things that you can do are dance and ping pong.
Oh my God, that's exactly what Dr. Amen said on my show last week.
Yes. And so and with dance specifically, because music is also activating like the frontal lobe, which is like your sensory experiences. So when you hear something or you smell something, it creates an experience, or it takes you back to a memory. So with the way that Kinergy is, we activate the senses through like a visual experience, but also high sensory. So if we're visualizing the earth and the sand and the water, like you're trying to smell it, you're trying to hear it, and you can create those experiences. And so while that's happening, you're building a new connector, a new neural pathway of that experience as you're releasing trauma. And so you can have a new experience, a new connection, instead of this old pathway that is a continual like trigger and scar, or sanskara, if you've ever read Untethered Soul, that's constantly like a reminder of an old
the breaking the habit of
wound.
being yourself, right? So if you're living from the place of your past self, you're going to continue having the same life. If you want to step into your higher self, it's time to break the habit of being yourself and build a new brain connection.
I just got chills. It's fun, to talk about. And, you just said you're going through like a tough time. So sometimes it's hard. Like when Kinergy was starting, I was going through my divorce and the loss of my dogs, who, I don't really talk about that because that's one of the most sacred things that I have that I've never really talked about. And I'm like, that's what I'm going to keep private. But I'll tell you offline. But as I was, having this massive expansion, I was also contracting in a lot of like loss and grief and pain. And so I felt like a hypocrite with this beautiful thing that's coming to fruition to like be this, beautiful platform for people to connect to themselves, while I felt so disconnected to myself. And so the fact that you're even here, continuing, is really beautiful, and sharing that you're also going through something, because I kind of just went into hiding. And it felt too overwhelming for me at the time, that I was like, I feel so inauthentic. I can't do this. And so I'm just really proud of you for continuing and sharing it, and that you're like in it and not trying to be
should
perfect.
See me for the rest of the week, where I'm just like, didn't wash my hair, just hiding somewhere. I'm like, see one human a day. I'm like, hi.
Well, and it's time,
Yeah.
I love that little meme on Instagram where it's like a glass jar with like a black ball that's like representative of grief. And then it's like grief never gets smaller, but the jar gets bigger, and the capacity to hold it just gets bigger.
I haven't seen it, but it's beautiful.
It's one of my favorite things to visualize, because it's like that grief is never really going to go away. Like, it doesn't go anywhere. Energy just always stays, and experiences and memories, but it's just your capacity to hold it is so different,
beautiful.
And so, I don't know. I love that visual.
That's so beautiful. I'm going to have one more question from
Yes,
one of my followers.
tangenting. That's me.
There's two more, so you can pick.
Yeah. No, you're good.
Mel Present is asking you any dating tips for someone newly single. And and one more question is, what's your daily morning or evening routine? Do you want to take both, or do you?
I'll take both. I'll do the second one first, because I feel like the first one's.
That's going to be a tangent. Okay.
I think so. So my daily routine is, so I do really well with structure. I used to think that it was like trapping me. I need to be free, but I'm so much better when I have structure. So I recently get up somehow without an alarm at like 4:59 every day for a 5 o'clock wake up. And I work out from 6 to 8. And within that workout, it's like meditation and breath work and physical activity. Also within that time, I could read just something that like I'm not on my phone for 2 hours, that gets my body moving, gets my brain functioning. And then let's see, I've recently started to make my own electrolytes in the morning. So it's just lemon water, but I add salt now.
Smart.
And
Biohacking right there.
Yeah. I add that. And then I'm doing this health thing for myself, and like a little like, well, I'm freezing my eggs, we'll just say it. And so with a lot of my like own personal health I wouldn't call them issues, but just things. I need a lot more protein in my life. And so I've actually started doing like animal based. So I just started that, which is
no
like
way.
really weird for me.
I was vegan for 8 years and I turned like carnivore
Yeah.
about last year, and I've never felt better.
That's
So
kind
I'm
of what I've
excited
just
for you.
started. And it was mainly for this reason, but as I've started it, I'm like, wow, like my moodiness or my brain fog or my life force energy just feels like it's back. But obviously doing it in a way that's like humane and, you know, sustainable and say sustainable farms, etc. And so I've been on that path right now. So yeah, I've been
That's
doing
exciting.
that. What else am I doing? I have meetings throughout the day. I check in with myself like halfway through the day and make sure that like I'm not just filling my calendar. I used to do that constantly. And so now like my therapist and I have talked, and she's like, just make sure that like you have space every single day to do nothing. And I'm
And
like,
be bored, right? Like
what? And so that one's a hard one for me, but I do that. And then honestly, I try to go to bed early. I mean, I am that person that's like, when the sun goes down, I'm ready to like go to bed. When the sun comes up, I like to wake up. I mean, that's my MO.
Yeah.
That changed though. I used to be a night owl.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
No, I go to bed like 8:30. I'm already like getting my night routine. What's your favorite biohack that brings you to your higher self?
This isn't even like a promotional thing, but it's
But
Kinergy.
yeah.
It's dance. It really is. And
I was like, I know your answer, but
yeah. Well, and I think it's because it's movement, it's breath work, it's visualization. And each one of those things, you can get into flow state on your own. But when you put all three together, it's like a Tesla supercharger. And it happens fast, and you get like the biggest jolt of energy of expansion, but you're also extremely grounded, where you don't feel like high. Like you still feel high, but you're still like, you're here on earth. You're not like out in the universe like la 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 la. You get it for a second, and that feels really good. But you are able to walk out of the room.
so good. I forgot that I did ask you the question about
Oh
dating.
yeah, the dating. Okay. Well, I'm single, so I'm figuring this out. But I think one of my friends, Connor, and his wife Vienna, they stayed at my house in New York last year, and they were like, "What do you want?" And I was like, "Qualities." So I was like, "Loyal and funny and this and that." And then I was like, "But if I wanted my fantasy, it would be this." And I went into all these like ideas of like, I want to maybe meet like a European, and like, you know, where they are artistic and cultured, and like we go to the opera, and like, and he goes, you know, those are all just the things that you want for yourself, right? And I was like, oh my God. So it was like a big moment for me that I think a lot of us project what we want for ourselves and our partners. And so like there was this guy, I think, that like I saw on my Instagram, clearly listening. Instagram is listening.
Oh, for sure.
And this like beautiful conductor from like Italy was like on my screen. Never DM'd him. But
can you imagine?
But it was like this, literally what I just said is my fantasy, right?
Can you imagine the DM getting from Joe's Hough? I was like, hey,
well,
how
wait
are
for
you?
it, because I ended up doing it, but I didn't DM him for like a whole summer, and then I happened to be in Italy for a wedding last year, and I was like, I have 2 days off. I was like, let me just see his schedule, where he's gonna be. He was in Vienna and he had a show, and I was like, I'm gonna go to the opera, but I'm gonna go because my friend Connor's voice was like, these are just the things that you want for yourself. And so I was like, instead of me needing like a partner to get me to go, like, I'm just going to go to Vienna, and I'm going to go watch this beautiful man. And eventually I did say, hey, I'm coming into town to see your show.
Amazing.
Hopefully I can meet you. And we did, and we met, but nothing happened from it. But it was like
an epic DM to
it
get.
was a moment that I was like, oh, you know what? I can create this, and I can get the things that I'm craving in another person for myself. So that was a big lesson. So that was number one. So if you're like looking for a specific thing in another person, just go do it yourself. Second thing, I actually recently have been going through like my history of romantic partners with my therapist, and we've been talking about like what are the things that made me feel the safest, that I loved in that relationship, that I didn't like, and then when I broke up with that person, what did I long for and miss in that relationship.
That's super like helpful.
And as I went through each person that I have dated, there's clearly a through line, and there are like 5 versions of people or qualities that make me feel safe. And each one of them either had a different one, or one of them had all 5, my ex-husband. And so like there were...
What makes you feel safe? Because that's the biggest one for women. Like when we don't feel safe, I believe that's the root cause of why we have health issues, put on weight. It's like for me, like putting on weight is not feeling safe, and one of the ways of how our body manages bringing that sense of safety.
Absolutely. Well, safety, I think, is like a term that's also being thrown around a lot, and like, so that also kind of like freaks me out a little bit too, that word, but it's the most important thing. And so your version of safety can mean something completely different than someone else. So I'll give you my 5.
Yeah.
So the first one is when somebody feels secure in themselves. Doesn't mean that they're perfect, but it means that they're secure enough in themselves that they are willing to do work, and that they are self-aware enough to that they are making conscious choices and for themselves. Like that
Beautiful.
makes me feel really safe, because it means that I don't have to be responsible or take care of or want somebody to change. They're going to want those things on their own.
Yeah. Beautiful.
So that's number 1. Second one, which I've had a lot of guilt over and shame because of my relationship with money and growing up. I've always felt like really terrible for having this, but I would like to feel safe that when I have a family and children, I can still have and continue to have the same lifestyle that I have while I am, being present in a different way.
Thank you for sharing this, because
even me saying that right now, I'm sweating. You know, it's a hard thing.
But like I have the same thing, and I also feel terrible because there's this big like stigma that like, oh, you're so materialistic, and I'm like, but it's also a big part of not feeling safe, and someone who doesn't have a good healthy relationship with money, it brings a lot of anxiety for a woman.
Well, and I think for me, like I've been making my own money since I was 9 years old, but never keeping it. Like I was always giving it away. And so, but I've always had this thought, like when I moved to LA, I had $2,000, which is a lot more than some people, and that was all I had. And
which is not a lot of money.
It's
in LA.
not.
It's one trip to Erewhon.
But that was all I had. And I was like, but I never had an issue. I was like, I will always figure it out. I will always figure it out. And to be honest, I'm like, my biggest fear was to be a mom, because I was like, I want to be present with my kids, and like
I don't want to be working all the time.
I don't want to be working all the time. So I haven't had kids because I'm like, I think I'm going to be too selfish, that I won't be able to be there. And so there's like 17 different things and reasons why that number 2 is important to me. And again, I don't need anybody to buy me this or buy me that. Like I can do that, and like I'm happy to do that. And that money doesn't motivate me, but it does make me feel safe.
Speaking of gifts, these flowers are for you, because I know that.
Gosh,
what's your love language?
They're beautiful. Receiving gifts.
Yes. We got them for you.
Thank you. These are so gorgeous.
Know that you need flowers.
These are so gorgeous. I
just
love
wanted to celebrate you,
flowers.
so.
Thank you. These are so gorgeous. That is my love language.
Yes.
Do you want me to keep going on
on
the things? Okay.
I was like, oh my God, you did the homework for me, because you identify those points so well. So it's super helpful for women listening. Okay, cool. Like this is what is making me feel safe. So thank you.
Well, yeah, like because I have friends that are like, yeah, I tell my boyfriend I don't feel safe, but my boyfriend's like, well, what does that mean? And she's like, I don't know.
I feel like it's a little bit like me. I'm like, I don't know what makes me feel safe. It's not like I think that someone's going to attack me on the street to some degree, but there is a level of like ungroundedness that I feel. So
Totally.
All right, continue, because I'm really...
Okay, third one, some sort of magnetism or talent. And it doesn't mean that they have to be an entertainer or an artist or anything like that, but just like a confidence and like a magnetism that they like love what they do and they're passionate about what they do. And like, I want to be in awe of someone. And again, it doesn't have to be this like extravagant thing, but just that there's this like sense of like, I'm happy with who I am and what I do and like how I am in the world, and I like doing this,
and they're connected with like why they're here, right? Which is like what's their purpose, right? So that's super super sexy.
Totally. And so that to me makes me feel safe. And physical, like being like an actual physical attractiveness, like I am very attracted to like hypermasculine men and like big and stuff like that. These are clearly an order of hierarchy, by the way. What's the most important to me?
Yeah.
And then emotional and spiritual vulnerability and connection. That's very important to me too. So those are all the things that make me feel really safe right now. I'm still in this process, by the way, of like talking through those, like what makes me feel safe. And those could change, you know, depending on who I'm with or what kind of stability I've found in myself. And that's been a huge part is, again, what am I looking for in the partner that makes me feel safe? And can I find that in myself? Beautiful. While I'm looking for that in someone else.
And also the sexiest thing is seeing someone who's so self-aware and also calls herself out on her shit, and being like, okay, I want all these things, but I need to become all these things too. And I'm super aware that it's a journey. So that is the most attractive thing. It's someone who's just like knows what they want, but also know that, you know, I'm going to be on my journey and I'm never going to get it perfect, but I just want someone who's like a buddy in the healing.
I just want to meet somebody who's going to meet me.
Yeah.
You know, like we can do life together. And that's the other thing too, is like, I can have chemistry with a wall. Like I love people so much. And like, I've loved every single person I've ever been with. I will always love them. You know, like that falling in love is not an issue for me. It's choosing who I want to do my life with.
Yeah. And who serves you.
And who I serve and who I can like make, you know, enhance their life and not make, but how I can enhance their life, how they can enhance mine and how we can create something magic together. Like it's the choice of who I want to do this with. And you know, that's what I said at the beginning of this interview is, as a human, it's one of the hardest things to do is to trust yourself and to have that own discernment of like what you want, who you are, and like trusting that you can have what you put your mind to.
Yeah, and that your dreams were given to you for a reason, and it's not just some kind of like, oh, it'd be nice to have, like, no, this is your homework. Like, you need to make your dreams come true because they were given to you for a reason. And
absolutely. And be still enough to like recognize what those dreams are.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah. So where can we find you?
Oh, in your living room. I'm never leaving with peanut butter. You can find me on Instagram at Jules Hough. I need to get on TikTok. So if anybody knows how to do TikTok, please let me know. At
Kinergy.
At Kinergy is obviously like my heart and soul, where I feel like we've created an amazing community. Fresh Vine Wine.
Oh, that's right.
What else? Canary House Productions.
Beautiful. And hopefully you get to find Jules in your living room when you tune into Kinergy, because you can play it on full screen and just feel like she's right there.
Yeah,
which is
we'll
amazing.
Dance together.
Oh, there you go, Peanut. Peanut came to say goodbye.
To say goodbye.
Yes.
Hi, cutie. Hi. And stretch again.
Julianne, thank you so much for coming. You're such a light. I love you. I fell in love with you, and that was beautiful. You're awesome.
Thank you.
Can't wait to create something together very, very soon.
I know, me too. Thanks for inviting me into your home and creating a very, very fun, safe environment for us to share.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching.